Shorty, what your name is? Do you have a man? Who you came with?
I'm so nervous. Okay. Okay. I need to center myself. Okay. All right. I'm gonna get started. All right, welcome back, y'all. Welcome to Street Academy Podcast, where we keep one foot in the academy and the other foot in the streets. I am Jackie, your wonderful co-host for this Minisode. Today, we are still keeping it going with celebrating Women's History Month, and we thought, what better time to run it back with Shelly Wellness, the host of the Mindful Plate and the founder of the Mindful Nutrition School, than to bring her in for Women's History Month. And so, hi, friend.
Hey, what's up, friend?
Welcome
I'm happy to
back.
be back. Yes.
Yeah, we had a good time when you were here last time. You were talking about
Collard greens.
We talked about collard greens. We talked about a lot of stuff. Our relationship to food. And I think, just as we're thinking about Women's History Month and just like honoring women, celebrating our journeys, that what better time to talk about our relationship with our bodies, how our bodies relate to like the role of food and all of that. And since we have gone back like 4 flats on a Cadillac, our relationship with each other, not just you and me, obviously, but like, women's relationships. So let's hop right on into it. You probably told us this the last time you were here, but I'm kind of curious about how you got into this work and thinking about our relationship to food, but more specifically, how do you think our relationship to food influences our relationship to our own bodies, or vice versa? Like, does our relationship to our bodies influence our relationship with food? I don't know.
Both, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've actually never thought about it that way, but as you say it, yes, it does. But how did I get into this? So let's start back when I was born. I was born with taste buds. I was born with a set of taste buds and wanted to taste and eat every single thing. I enjoy food. And when I was a teenager, that love of food became a crutch for me and a comfort for me, because I was going through a hard time, which is my parents' divorce. And as a result of that, I didn't have the emotional tools as a teenager to deal with all the feelings that were going on. And so I went to Cheetos, I went to brown sugar Pop-Tarts, and I went to Oreos. And
that sounds so good.
Ma'am.
They do.
They're designed to sound so good and they're designed to taste good. But what they do when they get in your body is a different thing. Yeah. So now progress on, we're in college, we're in our 20s. I identify at this point that I can tell that there's something about the way I'm eating that's not helpful, because I'm gaining weight, I'm feeling bloated. You remember that time I turned into a biscuit? All those things.
Of course I do. Of course I do.
That's another story. But I'm realizing that something about the way I'm eating is affecting my body. And so the first effect of the body was the physical symptoms. And then I go to counseling and realize that, what I'm dealing with is I have overconsumption of food. I am a compulsive overeater, is what they termed it and labeled it at the time. And so I've never been one for all the labels, but I recognized that the behavior in itself was harming me. And so I decided to set on myself on a lifetime journey of trying to better my eating habits and regulate them, normalize them before the pain of life and trauma hit me. And I started using food to cope. And in that journey, thank you, God, for delivering. But in that journey, what came out of it was I started realizing it's not just me. It's a lot of us who have this very interesting relationship to food, where food is no longer about the sustenance or about its ability to heal or build you, because food does build you. When they say you are what you eat, that is literal. Every cell in your body, your organs, your skin, your heart, your lungs, everything is made from the material that you put in. And so that's the first relationship with the body, like what you eat becomes you. And I really just became present that the emotional attachment to food was plaguing my system, but also when I started working with other people and decided to make this my life work and not just something I was working on for myself, I realized, oh, there's a way in which people are disconnected from their bodies that then makes them make food choices that further disconnect them.
What I'm curious about, like, this disconnect, because we're talking about like relationships with our bodies, right? And so, I think about disconnect as sometimes like something purposeful, like, oh, I don't like this person, I don't like this thing, I'm a disconnect and just not be involved with it. Or sometimes it's just like, not purposeful, unmindful, if you will, like an unmindful plate. But, I'm curious about like this disconnect. Like, can you just expound more on that?
Absolutely. So everyone disconnects around different things. So let's go back to
Mm,
your example about a purposeful disconnection.
mhm,
So we're thinking in terms of, I don't like this person, I'm going to remove myself, no longer going to be in a relationship with this person. It's a clear break. I
mhm,
want to talk about Black and Brown people. If you look at the history of colonization, there has been a huge disconnect from us, from our lands, from our cultures, from our ways of life.
right.
And what got connected was a false idea of white supremacy, and
Mm,
that particular standard of beauty, that standard of body is the standard. So if we look into our medical system, we see that the BMI is based on a European body. It's not based on bodies that have ample hips, because if you
mhm,
do, then all of a sudden you're overweight, you're obese if you use that as a scale. So when you have a cultural disconnection from yourself, it's intentional, it's unmindful in the sense that you're not thinking about like, well, I have a colonized view of my body, let me disconnect from it. But because of the repeated enforced beauty standards that you see all around you, as a Black woman, I'm now going into my own experience, I know that
mm,
there was a time and period where I was disconnected from my body because I thought that I was overweight, I was too fat, because I was
mm,
basing it on something that wasn't ever connected to me. And so
mhm,
sometimes we do disconnect in those ways because of colonization. And then there are times where it's more centered in the self experience of, well, I just don't like how I look. I look in the mirror, I'm overweight, or I don't like how skinny my legs are, whatever. There's so many things that people say, my arms are too big, my breasts are too small, just picking themselves apart. And so
mm,
when you see yourself as someone that is not whole, but rather that is someone that is filled with holes, HOLE, and you have to then
mm.
fill those holes with food so you can feel more whole and better about yourself. And so the relationship with the body and how you see yourself also then determines what you then feed yourself.
Mm. So this is a symbiotic relationship then. Like, do you think that it's fair to say that the better my relationship is with my body, the more whole I feel, HWHOLE, the better my relationship with food will be?
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
when you think about, all right, let's take, for example, your, well, how you feed yourself when you're feeling good about yourself, like on a good day,
Mm,
the choices you make versus when you are feeling down or crappy. Now, when you're feeling down and crappy, you might make tasty choices, no doubt. However, those tasty choices might be emotional. So you might eat more ice cream than you should have. You might have that extra slice of pizza when you really hadn't, when really one or two was enough. Versus when you're feeling good about yourself, you might be more mindful of saying, I'm going to get in the kitchen and prepare a meal for myself. I'm going to add some
mm,
veggies to the plate. I'm going to make sure that my plate is more balanced. And so sometimes how we feel about ourselves can play a huge role in what it is we decide to eat, especially since our feelings are constantly changing.
mm,
And so that's like a small example, but how you see yourself, how you see your body, is your body something that is worth feeding and fueling and giving nutrition for? Or is your body just a dumping ground for all your frustrations?
mm. That's interesting because I started to think about how gender like plays a part in this. And it's
Mhm.
starting to make me wonder if the relationships that we as women have with our bodies are inherently different than the relationships that men have with their bodies. And I ask that in part because I feel like you work with more women than men.
Absolutely.
If I'm okay, I was like, if I'm
Mhm.
wrong, correct me. But
No, I
you
do.
know, what is it about like being a woman that causes us to think about our relationship with food or our relationship with our bodies in ways that are just different?
So what comes to mind, and I can't say that this is based on scientific research, but I can say that as a woman, part of our responsibility, if we so choose so, part of our calling, if we so choose so, is to further life, to bring about life into the world. And so the body that can bring about life into the world has to be well, has to be whole in order to sustain a well, whole life. Now, mind you, you can bring in life into the world and have all types of issues with your body. Not saying that, you know, don't put this in a podcast, but if you're a crackhead, that you can still bring life. But is that life going to sustain? Is that life going to be whole and well? And so I think that as women, we are a bit more maybe acutely aware of the effects because we are carrying life at one point. And so when you're carrying life, and if you've ever been pregnant before, when you're carrying life, you realize that there's another being inside of you. Your body is no longer your own. Your body is now something that you're sharing. And so you're thinking about obviously your body, but also the other body that you're carrying. And then when that other body comes out of you in the form of your child, because all babies matter, in the form of your child.
Shout out to Amber.
You now have to think about their well-being and them being whole and how you feed them. So there's a way in which I think women are just attuned to the role in which bodies play in carrying life and bringing in the next generation.
I wonder if that is related to how women's bodies are scrutinized. I think about how, so many women are just picked apart. We either stand in the mirror and pick ourselves apart, or we get picked apart by family, friends, significant others. Please don't please don't grow up in a Caribbean household and go to a holiday dinner and have gained an ounce, because everyone will comment.
And don't have feelings. Please don't have feelings. Don't feel any way. Look, I'm kind of fat.
Right. Okay. I remember one family gathering, I got called too fat and too skinny, within the same half hour. And I was like, there's no pleasing. But I wonder how much of that scrutiny that women fall under as it relates to our bodies is related to this expectation of women carrying life and furthering humanity, and how much of it is
that related to that at all.
Yeah, I was just thinking, what do you think it's related to?
I think it's just related to men who are deciding what they want to see, what they deem as attractive. And because we've lived under, because this wasn't always the case, just so we're clear, this is purely a symptom of patriarchal standards. And I would even dare to say European patriarchal standards, because the standard that we're adhering to is not an African one. It's not an indigenous one. It is a European one, just so we're clear. So let's take the breast, for example. How long have we heard this public debate of breastfeeding in public? If it's about furthering life, that wouldn't be a debate. If it's about bringing about the next generation, that wouldn't be a debate, because my breasts are not just for you to gaze at and feel some sort of erotic fantasy. That's part of it. They're also there to sustain life. They're also there to do whatever else God has intended them to be. But their primary function at this stage is to make sure that you can sustain life when it comes in. So why are we having public debates about whether or not women should breastfeed in public? That's crazy.
That is such an important point. And now it's making me think about how much of our relationship as women, how much of our relationship to food and our bodies is driven by the standards of men and pleasing men, whether that's conscious or subconscious.
Exactly. And so you don't want to eat too much when you go on a date. When you go on a date, you eat salad. But when you go out with your girls, y'all order the whole doggone menu. You already know you do. You take some of this, you take some of that. But when you're with a guy, especially if it's the first date and he hasn't married you yet and accepted you for all the things, you eat a little, sensibly, quote unquote. But whose sense is it? It's definitely not yours. And I think that colonization and patriarchy have to be included in the conversation when we look at how we see ourselves, our relationship to our bodies and our relationship to food. Because when you look at indigenous cultures, so there's this book, and right now I can see the title, but not the whole title. So I'll send it to you later. But there's this book where essentially he talks about the introduction of flowers and porridges and that sort of food into indigenous populations that Europeans were basically colonizing. Before that, they ate their own food. They ate what they wanted to eat because they ate what was available to them in the land, and that had been their food for centuries, millennia. When the Europeans came in as a way to control them, they would essentially remove them from the land, take what they died, but they still had to feed them. So they were feeding them like ground up flowers and porridges. Within one generation, and when I say one generation, I'm talking about those people who were fed, they had children. You started to see dental disorders, you started to see mental challenges, and you started to see physical shifts and changes in their body. Wow. Because the food was not fortified, it was not vital, it was not their food. And so when you look now, like now we're sort of a global economy, a global food market. But the challenge is the foods that we're eating are foods that are often created for us in a lab or created for us by policy. Policy decides what we grow, what we fund. So we have access to grow way more than we actually do. But because we're looking at what governmental policies have, in coercion with capitalism decided is the most profitable crop, that's what we end up eating. But is corn really the best for you? Is soy really the best for you?
See, this is now making me think of when you talked about like indigenous, it started to make me think like, does this mean that if I were white, I should be eating completely different food versus me being Black, I'm eating does that matter? Or should everybody be eating greens? Okay.
Yeah, so it's not the race, because race is a social construct. So science has already proven that you could have people literally within the same race and they have worlds apart of a genome versus like you take a Black person, a white person, and they can be more familiar biologically in terms of their DNA structure, et cetera. So it's not about the race. What it's about is having understanding your body. What does your body need to function and thrive? This is where the relationship with the body is important. If you're disconnected from your body, because capitalism and colonialism has told you that you're not enough, you're not the best. If you're not this, then if you're not white, then you're not right. So you become disconnected from your body. So you haven't even taken the time to listen in and feel what feels best. To feel like, well, how does my body respond to this food versus that food? The only time most people tend to do that is when they're maybe taking an allergy test, right? Like, okay, I know I'm allergic to this, but we can do that every time we eat to figure out what food is best for us. Once you establish and figure out what food is best for you, it's really about eating the food that provides the nutrition that's optimal for your thriving and for your being. And so if you are eating foods that were just passed down to you without any thought about it, when you're in your teenage years or in your 20s, it doesn't feel like a problem. But by the time you hit 30, hello, my people 30 and over, your body starts talking to you differently. The digestive system starts talking to you differently. And so you have to take the time to figure out, for my particular constitution, not as a Black woman, not as a woman, not as a whatever, but literally for my human body, what does it need to thrive? And then make it a point to feed yourself that. And so your relationship with your food and your relationship with your body go hand in hand in that regard, because one is informing the other.
See, I want to switch a little bit because now we're talking about, relationship with body, relationship with food. I want to bring in women's relationships with each other, because I'm wondering how our social connections, specifically with other women, influence just like how we think and how we live. And for all y'all watching and listening, Shelly and I met freshman year of college in financial aid, Spelman College. And, you know, she said to me, your hair is cute. And I said, your hair is cute, girl. And we've been thick as thieves ever since. So how have your relationships with other women nourished you? Like, we're talking about food and like thinking about how, like, listening to your body and thinking about like what nourishes you. So how have your relationships with other women nourished you?
Oh, the sisterhood. Well, so I grew up an only child. So I always wanted siblings, and I definitely always wanted a sister. And I, mind you, just to be clear, like I grew up an only child. I have siblings, but they were on my father's side from a separate marriage. So we didn't grow up in the same house. And so it wasn't the same. Like I still wanted like that sister in the house. But I'll say that the relationship that I have with women has been such medicine, because there's something about us that we can sync up in a way that you can't do with men per se. Even as much as if you spend time in the same house or under the same roof for like a period of weeks or even months, your cycles sync up. That sort of thing is astounding to me. And I find that the relationship has been one of a mirror, you know, like holding up the mirror and reflecting back to one another. That brings so much value because you don't always see yourself. And so to have that sisterhood where somebody can see you, not with judgment, but with love. And that's you, Jackie. Not with judgment, but with love. Like that that means the world. And also, women, I think we're natural communal beings. We naturally seek out each other. We naturally share. I love that about us. I love that we're an open community. It's always been in those spaces where I learned about my relationship with my body, because other women before me were able to talk about their experience with their periods or menopause or pregnancy or going through a serious life change in their life and how that affected their bodies and how they navigated it. And without those stories and that connection, I'd be lost. Like my mama can only do so much and she's done an amazing job, but you need a community of women. You need a whole village. You know what I mean? So yeah, that to me has been like the beauty of being in sisterhood with other women, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's so important to just like say and you know, let it be known, because there's so many times where you hear negative things about women's relationships with each other. You know, I can't count how many times, you know, I have said to younger folks, you know, folks who are college age or thinking about college, or, you know, it doesn't even have to be younger folks, but, you know, like, oh yeah, you know, I went to Spelman, I went to a women's college. And I hear back like, oh no, you know, I could never do that. Or, you know, I would never want to do that because women are fill in the blank with all kinds of negative stereotypes. And so, you know, to just affirm that women can have these really positive and nurturing relationships with one another, I think is just really important to say.
Yes.
And it's a shame that we still have to say it, you know, but at the same time, I guess some people don't realize it. I don't know. It still baffles me.
I mean, it also goes back to, again, the colonization of relationships. So when you look at TV, TV is another way that colonizes people's minds. And so if you only put out a certain type of media where women are fighting, where women are backstabbing, where women are basically like harming one another through their words and their actions, then it's easy for the young people to think that that's how it is. And I always say, well, why do you think that that would be the image that would be put forth? Whenever there's an image that's put forth so strongly, to me, it's trying to cover up another truth. What would happen if women showed up in solidarity, in unity? Our wombs already want to connect with one another. Our wombs already want to sync up. So if we're syncing up at a cellular womb level, imagine when our hearts and our minds are also in accordance with natural law to sync up and share and be in community. Wow. That's just patriarchy. That changes the hello. There's no difference. There is none of that.
Yeah.
So now we have a different society. So it serves a role to have women constantly at odds, constantly divided. The same way when you think about Black people, it serves to have that image that we're not unified. It's really and truly, women are one of the most unified groups I've seen. We come together like no other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish this were a full episode because
I know we're going in.
And I'm like, well, let me stop myself because I know that I can keep going. But I just want to, before we wrap up, say how much I love you and how much I have enjoyed seeing you evolve as a person. You know, just seeing you evolve with your relationship with your body, seeing you evolve like as a person has been so inspirational for me. And I think that, you know, even when you talk about like women syncing up, there are times that you communicate to me without words, just communicate through your action and through your being. And so I just wanted to say that and let the world know. And I guess jump into our takeout boxes. Like, you know, if there's anything that you know, stuck with you through the conversation or just like last words that you want to say. I know that I have a couple thoughts based on what you said. I can go or you can go, whichever one.
You go first.
Okay. So I am really struck by how you describe that synchronicity. I think that's the word from the Sister theme song. But I loved how you described that and just articulated the importance of that. You know, and it's deeper than just our relationships with one another. Like, oh yeah, you know, that's my friend. We go hang out and do whatever. But it's literally a force field, like a type of power that can be used to counter forms of oppression. And I think that's really powerful.
Yes. Come on, take out box. Pack that up. Yes. Get an extra helping. Take that. Come on.
Yes.
My takeout box is for y'all listening and watching, is just to remind you that you're living in a miracle. If you've ever looked at your body and you've looked at it and you thought, oh, it's not enough, I'm too this, I'm not this, I don't like this, I want you to just reframe and remember that you're living in a miracle. That in order for you to be here, how many sperms, hello patriarchy, tried to find their way to get to that egg to fertilize, and only one. And when it happened, like life sparked within your mom and you got to be here. And in your life, in your body is an entire universe. We like to think of ourselves as individuals, but we're really a community of cells, trillions of cells that are working day in and day out together in harmony, synced up for your survival, for your thriving, because life wants you to live. Your body wants you to live, even when it feels like it's against you, even when it feels like, especially if you're in a body that's experiencing dis-ease or discomfort, your body wants you to live. And so when you make your next meal choice, whether it's breakfast, that snack, whatever you're thinking about eating, I want you to look at your plate and look and see, is this what I want to become? Do I want to be made of this? Because that's going to be your next cell. And is what's on your plate going to contribute to all that makes you great? And if it does, eat it. If it doesn't, dash it away. Don't even give it to the dog. Don't even give it to the dog, y'all, because dogs got to be great too. Don't give it to your pet. Throw it away. So
hear that, Belafonte?
Yes, exactly. We love the animals. So yeah, I leave you with that you are living, you are an embodied miracle, and your plate should reflect that. Your relationship with yourself should reflect that. So the next time you look into the mirror, say, I am a living miracle.
No better place than to leave it right there. All right, miracles. It has been another Minisode, another episode of Street Academy Podcast. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Shelly Wellness, tell us where to find you.
Come on now. If you need some help with what's on that plate, join me over on YouTube. The Mindful Plate is the name of the YouTube channel. Over there, I take all the ingredients and transform them into wellness that tastes delicious. Especially if you're Black and brown and you know you got taste buds. You say you don't want a boring salad, no problem. I got some vegan oxtails over there. I have some vegan buffalo cauliflower wings. Come eat with me, okay? The Mindful Plate. And also, if you know that you're stuck in your body and you're feeling not at home, your relationship with your body and your food is not well, come over to the Mindful Nutrition School. Over there, I teach programs and workshops where I help you better that relationship so that you can make sure that you feel good when you wake up. You're no longer questioning or feeling sick or dis-ease or any of that stuff. So Mindful Plate, YouTube, or www.mindfulnutritionschool.com. And if you're on Instagram, at Shelly Wellness, and they'll type it out, but at Shelly Wellness.
Perfect. All right, y'all, this has been another episode. I am out of here because I am headed over to the Mindful Plate. I'm headed over to that IG. I'm going to get some of those vegan oxtails and all that good stuff. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience with your bodies, with food, with each other, especially if you are women. And we will see you next time. All right, y'all.
That you know got their feet apart. The neck of the haters, the game and the devil like